When you sit down to practice, you need to use your time wisely. And one of the best ways to do that is to focus on a practice routine that touches on several different areas of musicianship at the same time. An effective practice session should incorporate a couple of different aspects of musical behavior simultaneously. And the majority of the exercises that I design for my private students are based around exactly this idea. The goal is to intentionally combine the study of music theory with things like fretboard knowledge and technical development or physical proficiency, melodic phrasing, time feel and rhythmic skills, ear training, emotional training, and most importantly, creativity training and real-time problem solving. The exercise that I'm going to cover in today's lesson will give you a good idea of exactly what I'm talking about. So let's get right into it. Welcome back to the channel, everyone. I'm Nate Comp from DYMECAST, and today I'm going to show you a powerful exercise that I call Bookends. This exercise is simple and yet complex at the same time, and the whole purpose of practicing like this is to force you to connect several different areas of musicianship all at the same time. The Bookends exercise is based on connecting major triad chord tones with melodic voice leading while moving through the circle of keys. As far as the music theory concepts that are the foundation of this exercise, you need to have a basic understanding of major triads and chord tones. You have to know the circle of keys, and you have to be familiar with the principles of melodic voice leading. Most importantly, you have to know your fretboard. If you have weaknesses in any of these areas, they will all show up at some point when you are trying to play this exercise, but that's exactly what we're going for. The first thing that you have to know to do this exercise correctly is how to spell the notes of a major triad. Every major triad in music has a root and a major third and a fifth, so you need to be able to spell the letters of any major triad starting on any possible root note. So if I have a C major chord, we need to know that that is C, E, and G. And if we have a G major chord, we need to know that that is G, B, and D. Every major triad in music is built using the same structure. Anytime you have a root note, let's say I start on the note C. If I go up 4 half steps, I'm going to get the major third, which is the note E. And then if I go up 3 half steps, I'm going to get the fifth, which is the note G. A lot of times if I have a student who is struggling with learning their triads as far as the spelling, I will make them do this on the piano because you can visually really see exactly how the spelling comes together. So C, up 4 half steps, major third is E, up 3 half steps, and the fifth of the chord is G. And I want to be able to do this starting on any possible root note. So if I want to build a G chord, G, B, and D is that spacing of 4 half steps and 3 half steps. Or if I want to build a D major chord, D, F sharp, and A is 4 half steps and 3 half steps. All right? So the first thing you have to know is how to spell every single major chord in music, no matter what the root note is, and whether those triads either use sharp names or natural note names or flat names. If you can spell all of your triads, then you want to organize those triads in the circle of keys or the cycle of keys. So what I've got here on this diagram is the chord name for every major triad in the circle of keys, along with the actual spelling of each triad, each root, third, and fifth. For this exercise, we're going to focus on the clockwise version of the circle of keys. You will often hear this called the circle of fifths or the cycle of fifths. And we're going to turn this into a chord progression, and then on top of that, we want to play melodies that actually connect these chords in a logical way. But you have to know how to spell your triads, and you have to know the sequence of these triads stepwise through the circle of keys. I always mention to my private students that the spelling of triads and the memorization of triad spelling in the circle of keys, that's kind of the price of admission to becoming a better guitar player. So if you are weak in either of these areas, focus on this first before you even work on playing through the examples we're going to go through, because the knowledge of triads and the knowledge of circle of keys is going to pay off no matter what style of music you play or what level you're at. You have to know this stuff internally and instinctively. If you know how to spell major triads and you understand the circle of keys, here's the fretboard knowledge aspect of this exercise, which is where the exercise gets its name from. If you are playing on a single string and you use the range of pitch or the range of motion of just 5 half steps, you should be able to find a chord tone for every major triad in the circle of keys within those 5 frets. So if I was playing on the B string and my bookends were 5th fret and 9th fret, okay, so if I'm going to use 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, all right, so the notes E, F, F sharp, G, and G sharp, or A flat, okay? In that range of 5 frets, I should be able to find either a root or a third or a fifth from every major chord within the circle of keys using just that range of 5 frets. And this is something that you should be able to do on any string in any range of 5 frets. So if I was on the high E string and my range was from 9th fret to 13th fret, if those are my bookends, I should be able to find within that range of 5 frets a triad note from every major chord all the way around the circle of keys. When it comes to making melodic connections between consecutive chords, we want to focus on the idea of parsimonious voice leading. The term parsimonious means restrained and stingy. So the idea of melodic voice leading is to take the path of least resistance and be as lazy as possible when it comes to melodic motion between consecutive chords. And here's the first observation to make about major chords in the circle of fifths. Consecutive major chords or adjacent major chords in the circle of keys will always have a common tone or a common pitch between them. And this is the smoothest form of melodic voice leading, where you have a note from chord number 1 that actually stays on the same pitch as we move into chord number 2. For example, if I have a C chord sound and I play the 5th of a C chord, which is the note G, and then that's followed by a G major chord, I can actually stay on the note G because now it's the root of the next chord. So the smoothest form of voice leading between 2 consecutive chords is going to be a common tone. So we always want to look for that if we can find it. Now, the pitches that are not common tones between adjacent major chords in the circle of fifths, you're going to have to use voice leading through stepwise motion. So we want to look for a common tone if one exists, but if there isn't a common tone, we want to look for stepwise motion. Sometimes stepwise motion is going to be an ascending half step between chords. Sometimes it's going to be a descending half step. Voice leading also includes the movement as far as pitch of a ascending whole step movement or a descending whole step movement. So if I had that same chord progression again of a C chord to a G chord, if I play the root note C over a C major chord, I can go down a half step to the note B and arrive on the major third of my G major chord. I could also play the root note C from the C major chord and go up a whole step, and then I'm arriving on the note D, which is the 5th of my G major chord. And then finally, I might start on the note E, which is the major third of my C chord, and go down a whole step to arrive on the note D, which is the 5th of my G major chord. Voice leading, once again, is all about the path of least resistance when it comes to melodic connections from one chord to the next. And this is very much going to tie into our principle of anywhere within 5 frets. If I know how to voice lead correctly, I can use common tones, whole steps, and half steps to connect one chord tone to the next and go through all 12 major chords in the circle of fifths within just the range of 5 frets on a single string. So now that we've got all of the theory together, here is the basic exercise outline. Choose a single string and limit your range of pitch or your range of motion to 5 frets or 5 half steps. And then using the principles of parsimonious voice leading, find a melodic path through those chord changes by locating a chord tone for every major triad in the cycle of fifths somewhere within those 5 frets. Now I'm going to go through 6 levels of this exercise. So let's start with level 1, which is just playing through the exercise slowly and out of time with no background accompaniment and learn how to say out loud the following information: the name of the letter that you're playing as far as the letter of the musical alphabet, the vertical chord tone function that you are playing, whether that is a root or a third or a fifth of the triad, and then of course the name of the chord that you are playing over. So you want to be able to say out loud as you're playing this exercise the name of the note, the chord tone function or the number, and then of course which chord you're playing over. So here is an example, and let me split the screen on this here, okay? If I was going to go through this pattern slowly, all right, and I'm going to play on the B string, and my range of frets, my bookends are going to be the 5th fret up to the 9th fret. So I'm going to start on the letter G, okay, which is the 5th of a C major chord. That's the top of the circle of keys. Now, as I go clockwise around the circle, I want to be thinking of, and here's what I've got written here, I want to be thinking of the name of the chord that I'm going to around the circle, and then how do I navigate that as far as the spelling of the notes that I'm going to use, and can I find good voice leading to connect different triad functions. So I'm going to start on the 5th of C major, which is the note G, and then this becomes the root of G major. So right there, I've got a common tone. Now, the next chord in my cycle is a D chord. I'm going to go down a half step to the note F sharp, which is the 3rd of the D chord. The next chord is an A major, and I'm going to go down a whole step, which is the 5th of that A major chord. Here's the nice part. The next chord in the circle is an E major chord. Well, I can stay right where I am, and that is the root of E major. From there, we go to a B major chord, and I can move up a whole step to F sharp, which is now the 5th of my B major chord. The next chord in the cycle is a G flat chord or an F sharp chord. Well, guess what? I can stay right where I am. Now I'm playing the root note of that G flat chord. The next chord in the cycle is a D flat, so I'm going to move up a whole step, and I'm going to find the 5th, which is the letter A flat, the 5th of that D flat chord. From there, I've got an A flat chord in the circle of keys. Well, I can stay right where I am because the note that I was just playing, which is a 5th, now becomes a root. Next chord in the cycle is an E flat chord, so I'm going to go down a half step to the note G, which is the 3rd of that E flat chord. The E flat chord is followed by a B flat chord. I'm going to go down a whole step, and I'm going to play the note F, which is the 5th of that chord. Here's a nice transition. After the B flat chord is an F chord. Well, I can stay right where I am because now I've just got the root of that chord. Finally, I'm back to the top of the circle where I started on a C chord, and I'm going to voice lead from F down to E, which is the 3rd of the chord. Now, take as long as you need to go through this, okay? And I wrote this on the chart here. Take as much time as you need to figure out your voice leading options when it comes to melodically connecting the chords. I would suggest you practice playing through this using 3 different vocalizations. The first way to play through this is to say the name of the chord that you are playing over. I'm playing over a C chord, G chord, D chord, A chord, E chord, B chord, G flat chord, D flat chord, A flat chord, E flat chord, B flat chord, F chord, and C chord, okay? Then do that again, but say the name of the actual note that you're playing. So you're thinking now, once again, much more about fretboard knowledge. So G, G, F sharp, E, E, F sharp, which is also G flat, A flat, A flat, G, F, F, and E. And then finally, play that again while saying the number of the function you're playing as far as the triad function in relation to the chord of the moment. So I'm playing from a 5th to a root, to a 3rd, to a 5th, to a root, to a 5th, to a root, to a 5th, to a root, to a 3rd, to a 5th, to a root, to a 3rd. Once you've established what your bookends are on a single string, and you can slowly voice lead through chord tones going all the way around the circle of keys, now we want to add some rhythmic accompaniment to that, because playing in time is going to force you to actually make the navigation melodically from one chord to the next with a little bit of time restraint on it. So for level 2, you want to play this same exercise over a jam track that has our background chord progression, and you want to play whole note rhythms, by using one note per chord or one chord tone per measure, so that on the downbeat or the arrival of each new chord, you can voice lead correctly from one chord tone into the next. I was just playing that example on the B string where my bookends were 5th fret to 9th fret. So here's what that would sound like using whole note rhythms over a jam track. Here's another example of playing through level 2 of this exercise, but I'm going to play now on the G string, and I'm going to use the bookends of 4th fret up to 8th fret. So these 5 frets, that's all I need to properly navigate melodically through voice leading chord tones all the way around the circle. Here's one more example of level 2 of this exercise. This time I'm going to be playing on the high E string, and my bookends are going to be the 9th fret up to the 13th fret. I'm still going to be using melodic voice leading to connect chord tones from one major chord to the next. I'm just playing on a different string and within a different range of 5 half steps. For level 3, we're going to stick with whole note rhythms, but we want to make this exercise a little bit more expressive. And the way to do that is to stylize some of these movements using grace notes or acciacaturas. The idea is, instead of just playing the individual chord tones, incorporate some grace note slides anywhere you have either a common tone or some type of voice leading motion. So here's an example of level 3. In level 4, we're going to modify the rhythmic interpretation of our voice leading movements by using some quarter notes. Instead of holding each chord tone for a whole measure and then voice leading into beat 1 of the next chord tone, we're going to re-articulate the chord tone that we're playing on beat 4 so that it naturally arrives on beat 1 in the next measure. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. All right, you'll often hear this called a chordal step. This is a much more intentional way of voice leading because the rhythm really kind of glues together the melodic motion across consecutive chords. Here's an example of level 4. Here's another example of level 4. This time my bookends are going to be the 6th fret up to the 10th fret on the G string. The first 4 levels of this exercise are really good at teaching you how to voice lead both melodically and rhythmically across a chord progression, but you will probably notice that they're a little bit too on the nose rhythmically. So for level 5, let's mix things up a little bit. Let's take our voice leading motion that was a quarter note from the previous level, and let's turn it into an 8th note anticipation, which means we're actually going to be voice leading into a chord tone for the upcoming chord before the chord actually arrives. This is where the name anticipation comes from. The use of anticipation will introduce kind of a temporary dissonance because you're hearing a voice leading melodic motion before the chord actually arrives. So here's an example of level 5. Here's another example of level 5. This time I'm going to be playing on the A string, and my bookends are going to be the 4th fret up to the 8th fret of the A string. Level 6 is also going to include some rhythmic interpretation. This time we're going to take our voice leading move and actually delay it by an 8th note. So when we did anticipation, we played the voice leading move slightly early before the chord change. With suspension or appoggiatura, we're actually going to wait for the chord to arrive and then do the voice leading move on one and, so that we get a little more tension or a little more dissonance by putting a voice leading move further into the measure instead of across the measures. So here's an example of level 6. Here's one more example of level 6. This time I'm going to be playing on the D string using the bookends of 9th fret up to 13th fret on the D string. The 6 levels that I've covered so far are really just the beginning of what can be done with this exercise. The more that you can incorporate different kinds of stylistic techniques and expressive articulations, the more exciting the exercise becomes. And the more advanced levels of this exercise are based on melodic embellishments and melodic decorations, which includes things like neighbor tones, passing tones, changing tones, neighbor groups, approach notes and escape tones and enclosures and surrounding tones. As a matter of fact, the melody that I played at the beginning of this video was based on applying a variety of different types of melodic devices to this basic exercise. So now that you understand how the Bookends exercise works, listen to that melody again and see if you can spot what I'm doing. If you would like a copy of a PDF chart that has all of the examples that I went through for this lesson, send a message to info@DYMECAST.com and we'll send you a download link for that PDF chart. If you enjoyed this lesson, give us a thumbs up and please subscribe to this channel. And if you have any questions or comments, leave those below. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.